Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Hmm? We are? Americans are taking over Europe. Who was it? Blah, 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 blah. Greekonian, thank you very much. I'll give you a thumbs up there. No clue what this is, guys. Just wanted to watch some videos looking at the recommendations on Discord. If you want to be on Discord and have me more likely watch one of your recommendations or just get to know you, link down below. Above that link, more importantly, the link to the original video, guys. Top of the description. Let's go. Let's give him a sub, too. My name's Connor. Did I say that? There you go.
If you walk in the streets of Valencia, you'll pick up English. But not just any English. American English.
Speak the right way, the American way.
Valencia is one of the most international cities in the whole of Spain. It's a tourism hotspot. It has multiple universities.
If you put if I on my life had to say where Valencia is, I could have sworn it was in Italy, and I feel very dumb.
The most international cities in the whole of Spain. It's a tourism hotspot. It has multiple universities and English language schools. And it's becoming one of the favorite destinations for Americans in both Spain and in Europe. And I'm here to investigate a topic that you might have seen on YouTube before. There is an entire subgenre of YouTubers praising the European way of life and escaping the United States. I initially thought this might be just a media trend, since complaining about your country seems like a sure way to get those sweet clicks and views.
I think you got it right there. I think you hit the nail on the head.
But when I took a look at the numbers and started talking to Americans who made the move,
they still have their homes in the US.
I learned that it's not just the vloggers that are coming here. Instead, it's the story of what seems like a growing trickle of Americans emigrating to Europe. New visas, online work, and an increasingly English-speaking Europe have lowered the threshold to come, while the United States is becoming a more unhospitable country.
On the latest outbreak of gun violence,
the trafficking of fentanyl and other synthetic opioids.
The Supreme Court ruled to end Roe v. Wade.
While the United States has prided itself on the promise of the American dream and for many remains a land of opportunity, could it be that its neglect of social policy is coming back to bite it? And might Europe's bet on quality of life finally be paying economic dividends? Since its founding, the United States has
I'm hooked. That was a very good intro because I'm super interested now.
Economic dividends. Since its founding, the United States has been a country of immigration, with more than 1 million people migrating to the country in 2022. But the United States is also becoming a country of emigration. Before I go out into the city, I have a couple of graphs to show you to give you an idea of how significant this transformation is. Americans have historically not been the globe-trotting types. After all, the United States has everything you could wish for: cities with varying climates, diverse geography, and jobs and opportunity aplenty. In fact, in 1999, The Economist wrote that educated Americans were the least likely people to leave their country. But over the past 2 decades, the number of passports issued by the United States has boomed, particularly after the 2007 financial crisis and what I can only assume is the aftermath of the 2016 US presidential elections, which was won by Donald Trump. Today, some 40% of Americans have a passport, and some have used it to cross the Atlantic to make their way to Europe. And if you're an American looking to move to Europe, or a European like me who's constantly on the move,
really only 40%, huh?
Americans have a passport. And some have used it to cross the Atlantic to make their way to Europe. And if you're an American looking to move to Europe, or a European like me who's constantly on the move, then today's sponsor, Speakly, is just what you've been looking for. I personally don't have the time to take language classes, but I love learning new languages. Actualmente vivo en Valencia y estoy aprendiendo.
English is not his first language. Oh my God, this guy's smart. His English is impeccable.
Classes. But I love learning new languages. Actualmente vivo en Valencia y estoy aprendiendo español. But learning a language is hard, and about half of the time you're learning sentences like El gato está en el fregadero, which frankly aren't that useful. Speakly has spent 6 years studying thousands of language learners, developing a learning method that avoids all these useless sentences to focus on stuff you can actually use in a conversation. And what I really love is that the app also offers music and podcasts in the language you're trying to learn, instead of just maxing out.
Guys, please, if this interests you, and you heard it here, just please use his promo codes from the video links. When they get sponsors, they seem how worthy the sponsoring is from the people going from here. So please, let's help him out if you learn this from this video. Okay, guys?
Reading comprehension, you can spread your stats in all the key competencies. If you're looking to learn a new language and want to support the channel, click the link down below and start learning some useful new languages today using Speakly. Try free for 7 days and get a 60% discount if you join the annual subscription. Now back to the video.
I just say, if I could learn, I feel like 2 great languages to know would be French and Spanish, because I feel like France is a country, certainly in Western Europe, where not a lot of people know English. And so places like Germany and the Nordic countries, there's less of a need that I feel to learn those languages, because those people are usually very good at English. So I feel like there are a lot of Spanish-speaking countries and French-speaking countries where they only know those languages. So Arabic, maybe Mandarin.
So the data I found on American migration is imperfect. It turns out it's quite hard to get a precise number. I thought of looking at the number of registered voters, granted visas, or permanent residents. For the latter, it shows a steady increase in Americans having permanent residency in Europe, with their favorite destinations being the south of the continent, particularly Spain, Italy, and Portugal. If we look at other data, there would apparently be 200,000 Americans living in France alone, versus about 40,000 if you look at the number of permanent residents. But I have a hunch that...
Sorry, guy.
If we look at other data, there would apparently be 200,000 Americans living in France alone, versus about 40,000 if you look at the number of permanent residents. But I have a hunch that the number of Americans is greater than that for the whole of Europe, especially because of the time it takes to get more permanent status. Some Americans basically move between European countries every 90 days while they wait for the slow wheels of Europe's bureaucracies to do their work. Yet throughout all these different metrics, one thing is clear. The number of American expats migrating to Europe is increasing, and there are multiple, often personal stories for that. But they boil down to Europe simply being a better place to live. Now, I could go through all the reasons and show you graphs for why that is, like social mobility, cheaper education.
Guys, expat just means like you were formerly from expat, meaning like just you're formerly from a different country. Come on, what's going on here? Yeah, okay, all right. I just want to make sure.
Access to go through all the reasons and show you graphs for why that is, like social mobility, cheaper education, access to healthcare, maternity leave, or work-life balance. I could also show you maps of walkable cities. Yeah, I know that it's kind of a Euroflex. Others come to leverage this, the American dollar, through geo-arbitrage.
There's something called geo-arbitrage, which basically means you can take what you earn in one place and move to another place that's cheaper and leverage it.
Since Americans earn more in absolute terms and the euro has fallen relative to the dollar, American incomes and savings can get more bang for their buck here. But based off of the people I have talked to here, there is one reason that stands out more than the rest. Safety.
I was also worried that if I went to a grocery store, was I going to get shot?
We know 5 people in the Seattle area. They were shot in a parking lot. Well, this is a safe place to have kids.
Carnage in our nation's schools has become painfully repetitive.
Who would have thought that keeping themselves and their kids safe would be so high on people's list of priorities? And as it turns out, European countries are more than willing to oblige these American migrants. They're educated, seen as culturally compatible, and while there is definitely a pool of retirees coming to enjoy a golden retirement, according to the stats, most are young and potentially valuable contributors to Europe's aging societies and government deficits. In the south of Europe, Spain, Italy, compatible.
I know I'm rewinding a lot, guys. It's just I'm interested in if I can't go on if I didn't.
Been willing to oblige these American migrants. They're educated, seen as culturally compatible, and while there is definitely a pool of retirees coming to enjoy a golden retirement, according to the stats, most are young and potentially valuable contributors to Europe's aging societies and government deficits. In the south of Europe, Spain, Italy, Portugal, and Greece have all set up digital nomad visas with substantial tax concessions in the hope of attracting remote workers to increase their tax bases. It's perfect for remote working Americans doing geographic arbitrage. But it has caused some backlash. Not just Americans, but also Europeans like myself that have come to live here raise prices on rent as internationals are able to price out locals, like in Portugal, where housing prices have increased by 40%, which has been blamed on mostly Americans coming to the country. And it's been trial and error to find winning
Is that like a global
recipes for these countries, on mostly Americans coming to the country. And it's been trial and error to find winning recipes for these countries. Portugal scrapped its golden visa, which allowed free access to the country for a $600,000 investment, after mostly American investors started hoarding real estate and drove up housing prices. But in the north of Europe, it's a different story. After all, it doesn't make a lot of sense to live there as a digital nomad since life is much more expensive and the weather is just terrible. Instead, these countries seem to be attracting a different cohort of Americans who are integrating much more into local economic life. In Amsterdam, one of continental Europe's more cosmopolitan cities,
I've been, which one was I on? I forget which one.
Economic life. In Amsterdam, one of continental Europe's more cosmopolitan cities, it's actually hard to find Dutch-speaking waiters. Settling down for Americans is much easier there, where English fluency is greater and where there are actually English-speaking jobs, owing to the export and trade-oriented economies of the North and the American investment in those countries. Recently, this has even created problems for top-tier jobs at the EU when Americans apply. And while
France, I think, is very unique in this way, and where I would consider them, you know, more Northern Europe than Southern Europe. I know they do border the Mediterranean too, but even like Paris area, France, where it is like it's like a gap where you drive from London to, you know, through the Channel Tunnel, and so obviously they speak English in London, and then you go into France where a lot do not know English. That is not something that I'm like you should. It's just a fact. And then you go into like Belgium and Netherlands, and then they speak really good English again. So France is kind of like a desert of English, in that kind of Northern Europe category. I know you can say Southern France isn't Northern Europe, but
the benefits of those migrated problems for top-tier jobs at the EU when Americans apply. And while the benefits of those migrants are clear, as with other immigrants, there's one important question: will they integrate locally? After all, in Spain, like much of Southern Europe, there's little hope for additional American workers to integrate locally into the economy.
Obviously, you could work for a Spanish company, you know, there's that back door, but that's extremely difficult because even Spaniards can't work for Spanish companies.
So the people coming here remain in a parallel, internationally focused economy, whereas in the north of the continent, where the economy and society is much more English-speaking, there is much more hope for Americans to fit in. Especially since on the cultural side, Americans are notoriously bad at other languages, and may, like many expats in new countries, judge that their English is enough to get around. But there's something I wanted to know. Is this American migration a potential silver bullet to some of Europe's biggest problems, like its place in the global competition for talent and for its aging population? Well, when it comes to talent, there are these lofty articles about the death of Silicon Valley and how engineers may relocate to Europe, as well as new startup laws in Spain or France, where European countries hope to attract global and American talent to bring much-needed dynamism to their economies. But so far, American founders haven't flocked to Europe. It's more the disillusioned American upper middle class that is coming to the continent. European bureaucracy and taxes means that the United States are still the kings of business. But where it could also have an impact is on the emigration of Europeans to the United States. There are fewer Europeans applying for permanent residence. However, since it's mostly young people that immigrate, this may also be a result of an aging Europe. There are just fewer people in the age group to emigrate to the United States. So once again, this is a bit inconclusive. But what remains true out of all of this is that 40% of America's 230 million people are entitled to European citizenship through 40% of America's 230 million people are entitled to European citizenship through
I think you meant 320 million.
Through ancestry. Some will likely choose to vote with their feet. Entitled to European citizenship through ancestry.
Sorry, never mind. So I take that back, sorry.
Some will likely choose to vote with their feet. That's a pool of educated, culturally compatible workers that European countries could potentially tap into. But as it happens, it also is likely to reinforce the cultural and family bonds between both sides of the Atlantic. And it's something that could have deep implications on the languages spoken in Europe, and particularly how dominant English would become. While the volumes are relatively small, this first wave of American immigrants is a sign of what could potentially come. While right now, Europe seems to be a refuge for Americans looking for a better life rather than economic opportunity, and there are economic benefits to reap, if European countries can get their act together and offer a more friendly business environment, then it's possible that it's not just the middle class that would jump ship. But what do you think? Is offering good quality of life a suitable strategy? And can countries like Spain offer enticing offers to attract wealthy, educated, and entrepreneurial Americans? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. In a previous video, I've talked about Europe's productivity challenge compared to the United States, and looking into why the US has been so successful economically. It's part of a larger story of the diverging economic fates of Europe and the US. So go check that one out. And once again, I would like to have a shout out to this video's sponsor, Speakly. Go check them out with the link down below.
Here's my opinion, not professional, but I think that America is much more of a money-making machine than Europe is, where Europe seems to be more of a money-making machine, but also a very much bigger focus on quality of life, welfare, and not just make money, which is, I think, where the U.S. is. And so I don't think you can. I hate the phrase "have your cake and eat it too," because that just doesn't make sense to me. But for the purpose right now, I'll use it. Like, you can't. I'm not sure if you can have American crazy hyper economic attitude growth and not have the debilitating effects on social stuff and caring more about your citizens and profits. And I'm not sure that Europe, vice versa, reciprocal. Europe, I think people are drawn to Europe because they care more about the quality of life, and it seems like money isn't the main thing over both money and just well-being of citizens. So I imagine that's kind of the difference. As far as the being afraid, like you're going to get shot, it's so weird, and something's got to be done. I live in the Northeast, which has, Sandy Hook occurred in Connecticut, which is in New England, right? There's much less of a gun culture here. That does not mean you're immune to someone getting a gun and going shooting, right? And I can't lie that it's not always on my mind, but just the fact that it sometimes is there is horrific and frustrating and infuriating and stuff, and I don't know what to do, really. Really interesting video, guys. Sorry, probably frustrating for some people when a subject I know so little about, but I like to learn about it. I like to give my opinions and see what you guys have to say. So I'd appreciate any comments at all. Hope you guys are doing well, and I'll see you next time. Bye.